we should have all of our meetings in the Tic Tac.
The Tech Tac?
No, Tic Tac.
The Tic Tac.
TikTok, yeah, I'm sorry. Making a
Mm.
TikTok joke. That's what I was doing.
Yes.
As we record this, President what's his name may actually be laying waste to the Tic Tac offices here in the U.S. I haven't been paying any attention to news today.
There was just a bulletin that came across the teletype
Oh yeah,
that Microsoft may be backing off its purchase offer for
for the
TikTok.
Tic Tac.
Ba-
Really?
the Tic Tac, yes,
Uh,
based on presidential opposition.
yeah.
What I want to know is how much of this is, you know, legitimate national security concern, and how much is that woman
Sarah Cooper.
with the Sarah Cooper videos.
Yeah.
How much that's driving, how much pure ire and irritation is driving presidential policy, and I would say probably quite a lot.
Yeah, we shouldn't really.
Seems like a fair bit of spite.
Probably shouldn't get into politics too much, except to say, I don't think Democrat or Republican, I don't think anybody can actually say in good faith he never tries to distract with something else. I mean, and maybe you think that's a great thing, and maybe you think that's a terrible thing, but whatever. At Mike T. Rose on Twitter, if you want to keep up with him there, or just follow him around. He lives in Queens. He lives in Brooklyn. He lives in the Bronx. He lives Greenwich. I don't know where he
Brooklyn.
lives. Oh, do you really?
Brooklyn.
I wasn't really telling
Brooklyn.
people where to find
It's
you.
Brooklyn.
I was honestly afraid.
You were.
I didn't mean
You
to
were
though.
You were inadvertently telling people where to find me. I live in Brooklyn. I'm perfectly comfortable having people know that.
All right.
It's not like I say I live in a small town at a particular geographic location.
That's true.
I live in
That's true.
a borough of a million and a half people.
How
2
has
million
the
people.
pandemic affected the boutique mayonnaise shops in Brooklyn?
the artisanal condiment
Yes,
business?
yes. Because they have one of those, at least one.
At least one.
Yeah.
I don't live in the particularly hip part of Brooklyn.
Okay.
Or any of the particularly hip parts of Brooklyn. However, a few blocks from me, I discovered earlier this week when I was on walkabout, is a new banh mi and Vietnamese ice cream place that looks amazing.
All right.
And it is sort of the artisanal flavor situation. So I'm looking forward to trying it. But I just poked my head in, took a look around, and said, "Wow, I need to bring my children, who are much cooler than I am, to this joint." But yeah, I mean, so a lot of the craft food products are made for export here in the People's Republic of Brooklyn. So I think the artisanal mayonnaise business is probably doing fine.
Okay.
They may not be selling as much at retail here, but they're probably shipping just as much of it as they are.
Okay.
And also, if you shout out to Mouth Foods, if you're looking for artisanal mayonnaise, Ken's like, I'm not.
No.
Thank you very much.
No, when I read about that, I thought there are so many reasons I hate that idea. First of all, because whatever it was that made that neighborhood cool is now being priced out by artisanal mayonnaise places. But the other thing is, I'm like one of 3 Southerners, I think, who hates mayonnaise. Can't stand it. Don't even like to look at it. Don't like to handle the jar. I'm the one who does the grocery shopping now. We haven't had mayonnaise since March.
Well, I can tell you, since you brought it to my attention,
Mm-hmm.
it is getting priced out of Brooklyn. The Empire mayonnaise, it is. There's a for rent sign up, and this was years ago. This was like 4 years ago. So I don't think the artisanal mayonnaise store still exists.
Okay. That's probably for the best, for the planet. I mean, I'm sorry for the people from the mayonnaise place. I want no one to lose a job. A whole store of mayonnaise, man. A whole store of mayonnaise. That's not what we're going to talk about. Although I do think that hashtag these uncertain times will play into the conversation that I wanted to have today. Apple just crushed June numbers. They just absolutely crushed June numbers. Apple had a better June this year by some indications than the June they had last year. Was it revenue was up? How much? Do you remember off the top of your head?
I don't. I'd
Yeah,
have to go
okay.
back and look at the
You
numbers,
see, I
but
don't.
I mean, it's now the most value. It's the most valuable company on the planet at the moment.
Is it? Because I thought actually that for somehow that Microsoft had actually taken that over. I could be mistaken though.
No, Saudi Aramco was in first place, but I believe since quarterly results, it is the most valuable. Well, and actually, just this weekend, I'm looking at the quote on at the Friday close. Assuming this is right, Yahoo Finance,
Hmm.
Apple was up 40 points
Okay.
on the day.
Yeah.
That's 10.4%, and I believe it is the most valuable company on the planet at the moment.
Okay. So it was actually, what's funny is before the bell, it was up, I want to say 35. So it didn't actually move a lot on Friday, but like after hours, I want to say it was up like 18, and then it was up a bunch more before the bell, and then I guess it continued to do well, even day of. Those would be new intraday highs and new closing highs, which I'm not going to be talking about on Mac OS Ken this week, because I'm not doing Mac OS Ken this week, so I'm sorry. What do you suppose that's based on? Is it the 4-for-1 stock split? Is it the just how amazingly well they did and hashtag these uncertain times? If you were a guessing man, if you were a betting man, you would say, well, yeah, obviously because.
As someone who holds a, a modest position in the stock, I want to be a little cautious about talking about forward-looking stuff. I will say that I think that for Apple's one of those companies that represents, a flight to quality for the market,
Mm-hmm.
inevitably. Take it two steps back. You can think about Apple, the entire company, or you can think about Apple as the iPhone. And really, when you're talking about the results or when you're talking about Apple's growth, it is iPhone Incorporated. The iPhone business alone is larger than the GDP of Belgium or possibly a smaller country, but it's huge.
Right.
And that battleship, the question is always, is that ship turning? Are there storms ahead of the iPhone business? What is interesting about that, the way the iPhone hits the market, is it is always going to be addressing, the top, I mean, globally, probably the top 2% of smartphone consumers or phone consumers, because the rest of the market is so consumed by cheap Android phones.
Mm-hmm.
So this was really a question of, is Apple continuing to sell to people who have discretionary income? Is the consumption of iPhones slowing down? And I didn't look at the detail results, so I can't tell you what they said, but clearly the market feels confident that the iPhone business is going strong, and that potentially the ARM transition is going strong. Apple may be simplifying its business going forward by transitioning the desktops to ARM over the next couple of years, but I mean, I look at this and I say, yeah, the iPhone Incorporated is doing fine. There are a lot of other companies, Amazon reported great results. Everybody else reported great results. I think that anyone whose business has less exposure to how miserably things are going in some parts of the United States is probably doing better.
Mm-hmm.
But not being a professional Apple pundit anymore, I can't really say. My guess would be, however, that the iPhone is doing is strongly showing health going forward.
There were a couple things that concerned me on the call, and I mean, nobody expected, including Apple, I think, nobody expected the company to do as well as it did. I think they definitely expected services to go up. I believe they actually said that on the last earnings call. They expected iPhone sales to go down, and iPhone sales did not go down. And I know that all the different analysts kept congratulating them on a return to growth for iPhone. I don't know if that was units or if that was revenue percentage. In fact, it must have been revenue percentage because they don't report units anymore. The two things that they kept pointing to were, well, three things that they pointed to. The lifting of stay-at-home orders in different parts of the world, various economic stimulus programs that were going on in different parts of the world, and the launch of iPhone SE. Well, you can't launch iPhone SE again, although you can sort of get people, used to the idea that it's a thing that exists. Although iPhone 11, I think he said, is still the most popular phone, but iPhone SE definitely helped buoy sales. Stimulus thing, Congress went home this weekend. Like, even if we end up here in the States, now granted, we're not just talking about the U.S. I mean, China showed amazing strength for iPhone. last quarter. I think it was problematic in April, but they were seeing growth again in May and June. Enough that it actually saved the quarter. Enough that it actually did better than last year. I don't know. Like, the thing that I wonder is, do last quarter's numbers matter? I mean, they matter because they show that Apple was able to execute in hashtag these uncertain times. At the same time, everything that's going on outside is still so fluid. There's still so many things that we don't know. How long we're going to be locked inside, whether or not there is going to be another stimulus plan, things like that. And I was wondering, did the stock shoot up because people are convinced that Apple is going to do amazingly because they're just firing on all cylinders and will continue to do so no matter what the world throws at it? Or was it the 4-for-1 stock split?
Well, I mean, I think it's a combination of all those things. Number one, the earnings beat, now that I have the numbers in front of me, is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and we used to, those of us who've been Apple watchers for years remember the quarter after quarter of consistent, dramatic beats of the analyst expectations, and then Apple's guidance becoming less conservative, and then and some leaner times. This is a 54-cent per share beat. $2.58 earnings per share versus $2.04, which was the analyst consensus. That's ridiculous.
Right.
I mean, that is legitimately ridiculous. Overall revenue close to $60 billion. A little less than half of that is iPhone. $13 billion in services revenue. I mean, I think anyone looking at this thinks this is a company that had a healthy quarter in the midst of extraordinary headwinds. And Apple's not issuing guidance for the next quarter. I think this is the second or third quarter in a row they're not issuing.
Third. They took guidance off because in February they were like, yeah, we don't actually know what's going to happen. We thought we knew. It turns out we don't. So no guidance going forward.
Right.
And then they did the same thing for the June quarter and the same thing for September.
But I think the 4-for-1 split certainly does. It creates a float up effect because there are a lot of investors and a lot of funds that can't afford Apple or don't want to put money into Apple at $400 plus a share,
right,
but at $100 a share can buy it. So it becomes a more consumable. Basically, you've taken the giant box of Tide Pods and you've broken it out into the 4 individual bags of Tide Pods, which now that you can put on the shelf, people are like, well, I didn't need a giant box of Tide Pods, but I could go for a bag of Tide Pods. So I think that's part of it as well. But I for years being very, very closely focused on what the stock was doing and being aware of sort of the back and forth and still being a subscriber to Phil Elmer DeWitt's Apple 3.0, which is, for my pound for pound, the best and most concise view of Apple from a financials perspective.
Yeah.
It astonishes me, and I think it astonished them too. I mean, I think they were kind of like, yeah, we didn't, like, to your point, we didn't know how this was going to go. Our manufacturing is subject to constraints that have to do with the pandemic. The consumption, the audience has to do with it. Obviously, if the U.S. market gets disrupted, we have a problem. But Apple is so broadly consumable across the globe, it's hard to knock it off its perch. It's astonishing looking at these numbers.